I'll start this off by saying I don't believe in demons. Never did. Ghosts? Maybe. A lingering soul or energy could kind of make sense in a scientific way, you know? But demons, pitchforks, possessions, all that exorcism crap always seemed way too dramatic for me. If you're reading this expecting me to say I was a believer from the start, sorry to disappoint. But now, I'm writing this because I think I screwed up and I don't know how to fix it. I need help, and I'm not sure anyone can give it to me. Let me back up. I run a small YouTube channel where I test out haunted internet challenges. You know, Bloody Mary, the Midnight Man, summoning rituals. My whole thing is debunking them. Like, hey look, I said Candyman 5 times in the mirror and nothing happened. It's dumb, but people love it. I guess it helps that I'm good at faking bravery, until now. It started 2 weeks ago. I was scrolling through Reddit looking for ideas for my next video. My viewers had been asking for something bigger, something darker. That's when I found this tiny thread buried in a sub called r/occult rituals gone wrong. It only had 2 upvotes, but the title grabbed me. 21 ways to invite a demon, don't do this. The post was a long, rambling list written by some anonymous user. Half of it sounded like urban legend stuff, Ouija boards, saying a demon's name. But the last few rules got weird, like stare into the shadow until it moves and respond to the knock even if no one's there. Creepy, right? But obviously fake. At least I thought so. The first rule, I couldn't stop thinking about that list. It was such a perfect setup for my channel, debunking the 21 ways to summon a demon. I could already imagine the thumbnail. Me in front of a dark mirror, candles flickering, maybe a fake shadow photoshopped behind me. My audience eats that stuff up. So I bookmarked the post, made some notes, and set up my camera that night. The first few rules were easy to laugh off. Rule 1. Whistle at night to attract wandering spirits. I grabbed my camera, stepped out onto the back porch, and whistled a few tunes under the stars. It was quiet out there, the kind of quiet where you can hear your own heartbeat. My backyard backs up to a patch of woods, and there was just enough moonlight to make the tree line look like jagged teeth. I whistled again, louder this time, and held the camera out to show the empty yard. Guess what, guys? No ghosts. I grinned into the lens. But when I played the footage back later, I noticed something weird. After my second whistle, there was this faint sound in the background, a low, warbling echo, like someone or something whistling back. Probably just the wind, I told myself. Still, it gave me a little chill. Rule 2. Speak their name. The list didn't say which name to use, so I googled demon names and picked the creepiest one I could find, Asmodeus. I sat on the floor of my bedroom, candles lit for dramatic effect, and said it out loud 3 times. Asmodeus, Asmodeus, Asmodeus. Nothing. See? I said, turning to the camera. This is why I don't believe in this stuff. If there's a demon named Asmodeus out there, he's too lazy to show up. I was halfway through editing that clip when the lights flickered. Just once, but enough to make me pause. Great, I muttered. The fuse box again. My house is old, and the wiring's been on its last legs since I moved in. Still, it was the first time it had done that without something obvious, like the microwave or the AC running. Rule 3. Draw their symbol. I found the weirdest sigil I could on that same demon names site. It looked like a swirling spiral with a jagged X through the middle. I sketched it onto a piece of paper, held it up to the camera, and said, "If I just summoned a demon, I hope he likes my art skills. This looks like a bad tattoo." Nothing happened, again. But I swear, later that night, I woke up to a faint scratching sound, like fingernails scraping against wood. I brushed it off as my brain playing tricks on me and went back to sleep. Rule 4. Knock 3 times on a door to invite them in. This was the first one that actually freaked me out. Not because I thought it would work, but because of the symbolism. Something about the whole mocking the Holy Trinity thing gave me goosebumps. But I was committed now, and my viewers would roast me if I chickened out. I set the camera on my tripod in the hallway and knocked 3 times on my bedroom door. Knock, knock, knock. "Okay," I said to the camera. "If you're out there, demon buddy, consider this your formal invite." I waited, listening to the silence. My heart was pounding for no reason, but the house stayed quiet. I laughed it off and went to bed. But around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of knocking. 3 sharp raps coming from the front door. Knock, knock, knock. I sat up, heart racing, and stared at the bedroom door. My first thought was that someone had broken in, but then I realized the knocking was coming from outside. I grabbed my phone and crept down the hall, barefoot, every step making the floor creak louder than I wanted. When I reached the front door, I hesitated. "Hello?" I called through the wood. No answer. Knock, knock, knock. My throat tightened. I checked the peephole. The porch was empty. I'm not proud of what I did next. I unlocked the door and cracked it open. There was no one there, just the night. But as I was closing it, I noticed something on the welcome mat, a small shiny coin. It wasn't there earlier. I picked it up, turned it over in my hand. It was weirdly warm, like someone had just been holding it. I slammed the door, locked it, and didn't sleep for the rest of the night. Over the next few days, I kept going through the rules. Some felt stupid, others sent shivers up my spine. Rule 6 was staring into a mirror, which was honestly boring until I thought I saw something shift in the corner of the glass. Rule 8 was responding to knocks, which, after that night, I refused to do again. The house started feeling off. The air was heavier, like it was pressing down on me. Shadows seemed darker than before. At first, I chalked it up to my imagination, or maybe sleep deprivation. But then things got worse. It started with small stuff, lights flickering, doors creaking open on their own. But one night, while I was editing footage, I heard someone whisper my name. Not like a hallucination either. It was real and close, like someone leaning in right next to my ear. Jake. I whipped around, heart hammering, but the room was empty. The whisper didn't stop haunting me. I replayed it in my mind over and over. The way it lingered, close and wet, like someone had leaned right up to my ear to say my name. I told myself it wasn't real. Maybe my brain glitching from lack of sleep or my overactive imagination. But deep down, I knew better. Still, I couldn't stop. It wasn't just for the channel anymore. It was like the list had dug itself into my brain. I'd catch myself scrolling through it during meals, wondering which rule I should try next. And the more I followed it, the more wrong everything felt. Rule 7. Read aloud from an ancient book. I didn't have an ancient book, obviously, but I figured the internet would have something close enough. A quick search led me to some occult archive website with scanned pages of forbidden texts. One of the images was labeled The Lesser Key of Solomon, and it had a passage that looked suitably creepy. I printed it out, lit a candle, and started reading. The words were Latin, and I didn't understand a thing I was saying. But as I read, the candle flame flickered wildly, like someone was blowing on it. By the time I finished the passage, the room felt ice cold, and my breath fogged the air. "Okay," I muttered, trying to laugh. That was weird. The next morning, I woke up with a deep scratch down my arm. It wasn't there when I went to bed. Rule 9. Bring a cursed object into your home. This one felt like it should have been the most dangerous, but I wasn't ready to back out. Besides, I had no idea where to find a cursed object. So, I improvised. There's this antique shop a few blocks from my house. It's one of those places that smells like mildew and old wood, with shelves full of random junk that feels like it's been collecting dust for decades. I told the owner I was looking for something spooky, and he handed me a small, tarnished mirror. "It's been here for years," he said. "Came with a warning, if you believe that sort of thing. Something about seeing things you don't want to see." Perfect. I brought it home, set it up on my desk, and filmed myself staring into it for 10 minutes straight. Nothing happened at first, just my own tired reflection staring back. But then, just as I was about to give up, I saw something shift in the background. It was faint, almost like a shadow moving across the wall, but there wasn't anything behind me, just my empty room. My heart started racing as I leaned closer to the mirror, trying to see what it was. That's when I noticed my reflection wasn't moving. I blinked. My reflection didn't. It just stared back at me, unblinking, its eyes slightly too wide. I shoved the mirror off the desk. It shattered on the floor, pieces scattering everywhere. Rule 10. 3 knocks at midnight. By this point, I should have stopped. I know that, but it felt like the list wouldn't let me. Every time I tried to ignore it, I'd feel this itch under my skin, this overwhelming urge to keep going. So, at midnight, I sat in the living room and knocked on the coffee table 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, From the hallway, I heard it. Knock, knock. The sound came from my bedroom door. I froze, staring down the dark hallway. My brain was screaming at me to stay where I was, but my body was already moving, drawn toward the sound. I pushed the door open slowly, half expecting to find someone standing there. But the room was empty. The only thing out of place was the mirror I'd shattered earlier. The pieces weren't on the floor anymore. They'd been arranged into a circle on my bed. Rule 12. Say yes to the unknown voice. The phone rang at exactly 3 a.m. I'd left it charging in the kitchen, and when it started vibrating against the counter, I almost didn't get up to answer it. But something about the timing felt important. I checked the caller ID. It just said unknown. "Hello?" I said, my voice shaky. For a few seconds, there was nothing but static on the other end. Then a voice broke through. It was deep and distorted, like a bad recording played underwater. "Will you let me in?" it asked. I froze. My heart pounded in my chest, and every fiber of my being told me to hang up. But the words came out before I could stop them. Yes. The line went dead. The house went quiet. Too quiet. No humming fridge, no distant creaks, no sound at all. And then I heard it for the first time. Breathing. It was faint, slow, and deliberate, like someone standing right behind me, exhaling against my neck. I spun around, but there was no one there. The breathing didn't stop. It followed me from the kitchen to my bedroom, getting louder whenever I turned off the lights. I slept with every bulb in the house blazing that night, but it didn't help. The breathing didn't care about light or dark. It was always there, just behind me, just out of sight. After that phone call, I started hearing the breathing everywhere. At first, it was faint, almost like white noise, so I told myself it was just my mind playing tricks on me. But over the next few nights, it got louder, closer. When I sat on the couch editing my videos, it would come from behind me. When I went to bed, it was right next to my ear. I started sleeping with every light in the house on, but it didn't help. The breathing didn't need darkness. It was always there, slow and steady, like it was waiting for something. Rule 13. Stare into shadows until they move. This was one of the rules I'd been putting off. Something about it felt worse than the others. Maybe because it wasn't an action, it was more like an invitation. But by this point, I was too deep in to stop. I set up my camera in the basement. The single light bulb hanging from the ceiling cast long, flickering shadows across the concrete walls. I sat down on an old crate, aimed the camera at the darkest corner of the room, and waited. The air felt heavier down there, like the walls were closing in. My chest felt tight, and every instinct in my body screamed at me to leave. But I stayed, staring into the darkness until my eyes watered. And then it moved. At first, it was subtle, like the flicker of a candle. But then the shadow stretched, curling along the wall like smoke, and I swear I saw something shift inside it, something with eyes. I bolted. I didn't even grab the camera. When I went back for it the next morning, the footage was corrupted. Rule 14. Accept a gift from the unknown. I found another coin the next day. This one was in my kitchen, sitting in the middle of the counter like it had been placed there deliberately. It looked identical to the first coin, the same size, same faint, unreadable symbols etched into the surface. I didn't touch it at first. I just stared at it, trying to figure out how it had gotten there. The front door was locked. The windows were locked. No one else had been in my house. I wanted to throw it away, but something stopped me. I don't know why. Instead, I picked it up and slipped it into my pocket. It felt warm against my skin, just like the first one. That night, the breathing got louder. My audience started noticing things in my videos. It started with a comment on the video where I stared into the shadows. At 4:16, look at the bottom right corner. There's something moving behind him. I rewatched the footage 3 times before I saw it. In the corner of the frame, just barely visible, was a dark shape. It didn't look human. It was too tall, too thin, and its limbs bent in ways they shouldn't. Another video had whispers in the background. Another had my rocking chair moving on its own. The comments started piling up. This is staged, right? Dude, you need to stop before something bad happens. Is anyone else getting seriously bad vibes from this? But the worst comment came from someone with no username. Just a blank profile picture and an empty name field. All it said was, "It's watching you." Rule 15. Offer it something precious. I didn't want to do this one. The rule didn't say what to offer, but I figured it had to be something meaningful, something that mattered to me. I sat in my living room with the 2 coins in front of me, trying to decide. My mind kept circling back to my mom's bracelet. She gave it to me when I was a kid, and it's one of the few things I've managed to keep with me through all the chaos of my life. I didn't want to part with it, but the list felt like it was pulling me forward, demanding more. So I took the bracelet, placed it on the coffee table next to the coins, and said, "This is yours now." The room went silent. Not the normal kind of silence either. This was oppressive, suffocating. It was like the house itself had stopped breathing. The next morning, the bracelet was gone. Rule 16. Enter a cursed place after dark. The list said I had to find a place where the dead don't rest. I had no idea where to look. This isn't exactly something you can Google, but after digging through some local forums, I found an abandoned cemetery just outside of town. The cemetery was fenced off, the kind of place teenagers dare each other to sneak into for a thrill. The forum said it had been closed for decades after some kind of accident, though no one seemed to know exactly what happened. Perfect. I brought my flashlight, camera, and a stupid amount of false confidence. The second I stepped through the rusted gate, the air felt wrong. It wasn't just cold, it was heavy, like the atmosphere was pushing down on me. My flashlight flickered as I walked between the crumbling headstones, each one weathered and illegible. I set the camera on a tripod and recorded myself walking around. "See? Nothing's happening," I said, forcing a laugh. Then I heard it, a low whisper, just behind me. I spun around, flashlight shaking in my hand, but there was nothing there. The whispers grew louder, circling me, overlapping until they sounded like a full-blown conversation. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was sharp and angry, like they didn't want me there. I grabbed the camera and ran. When I reviewed the footage later, the audio was clear. Leave, leave, leave. Rule 17. Interact with it in a dream. The first time I saw it in my dreams, I didn't know it was a dream. I was standing in my bedroom, everything exactly as it was in real life. The messy bed, the cluttered desk, even the half-empty water bottle on my nightstand. But the air was too still, and the shadows in the corners of the room were too dark. I turned toward the mirror and froze. It was there, standing behind me. It was tall and thin, its limbs unnaturally long, with fingers that ended in sharp claw-like points. Its skin was pale and stretched tight over its bones, and its eyes, God, its eyes. They were black pits, so deep it felt like I could fall into them. It didn't move. It just stared at me through the mirror, unblinking. When I woke up, my hands were bleeding. The scratches matched the shape of its claws. Rule 18. Invite it into your home. I didn't want to do this one. I really didn't, but I wasn't in control anymore. At midnight, I stood in the living room with the 2 coins in my hand and whispered, "You're welcome here." The house immediately went silent. No creaks, no wind, no distant cars, nothing. Just pure, suffocating silence. Then the knocking started. It wasn't just one knock this time. It was everywhere, on the walls, the windows, even the floor beneath me. The house shook with the force of it, and I fell to my knees, clutching my ears. The last thing I remember before passing out was a voice whispering, "Mine." Rule 19. Break something sacred. The list said to destroy a symbol of protection. I hesitated for hours before trying this one. There's something about destroying something holy, or at least meaningful, that just felt wrong. But I couldn't stop myself. The rules felt like they had a hold on me, pulling me forward no matter how hard I tried to resist. There's a small wooden cross I've had since I was a kid. My grandma gave it to me when she was still alive, and it's hung above my bed in every place I've lived. I don't think I'd ever thought of it as sacred, not in a spiritual way, but it had always been comforting. That night, I took it down. The wood felt warm in my hands, almost alive. My stomach churned as I stared at it, trying to convince myself that it didn't mean anything, that it was just a stupid piece of wood. I grabbed a hammer. The first strike splintered the cross down the middle, and I swear I heard something groan, low and guttural, like the house itself was in pain. The second strike shattered it completely. The lights in the room flickered. I smelled something sharp and metallic like blood or rust, and the air turned cold. I tried to tell myself it was just my imagination. But then I saw the scratch marks. They were on the wall above my bed, where the cross used to hang. Long, deep gouges like claws had raked through the plaster. Rule 20. Spend 3 hours in total darkness. This was the one that almost broke me. The rule was simple. Turn off every light, block every window, and sit in total darkness for 3 hours. No phone, no candles, no flashlight, nothing. I set up my camera in the living room. I figured if anything happened, I'd want it on tape. Then I went around the house, turning off every light and covering every window. The darkness was suffocating. I sat on the couch, my knees pulled up to my chest, and stared into the black void around me. At first, all I could hear was my own breathing and the faint hum of the fridge in the kitchen. Then, the fridge stopped. The house went completely silent, and the air grew colder. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears, my heartbeat pounding like a drum. That's when the knocking started. 3 knocks, sharp and deliberate, on the living room window behind me. I froze. My mind raced through every possibility. A prank? An animal? But I'd covered the windows. There shouldn't have been anything outside. Nothing that could knock. The knocks came again, louder this time. Knock, knock, knock. My mouth was dry, my hands shaking. I wanted to turn on the lights, to run outside and see if someone was messing with me, but the rules were clear. I had to stay in the dark for 3 hours. The knocking didn't stop. It moved, first to the front door, then to the walls, then to the floor beneath me. It was everywhere, relentless and maddening. And then it came closer. I heard it moving through the house, heavy footsteps thudding against the floor. My breath caught in my throat as the footsteps stopped right in front of me. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel it. Something huge, something wrong, standing inches away. It exhaled, slow and deliberate, and the smell hit me like a punch to the gut. Rotting meat, sulfur, and something else I couldn't name. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying for it to go away. The last thing I remember was a voice, low and gravelly, whispering, "Almost time." Rule 21. Welcome it into your world. The final rule didn't have any instructions. No description, no warnings, just those 6 words. Welcome it into your world. I stared at the list for what felt like hours, trying to make sense of it. What the hell did it mean? Wasn't that what I'd been doing this whole time? The thought made my stomach turn. The rules weren't building up to a moment of summoning. They'd been summoning it all along. With every knock, every word, every step, I'd been dragging it closer. Now it was here, waiting for me to open the door completely. I didn't want to do it. My whole body rebelled against the idea. But I couldn't fight it anymore. The pull was stronger than my fear, stronger than my logic. It didn't feel like a choice. It felt like inevitability. I started at midnight, just like before. I turned off every light in the house and sat on the floor of the living room, the 2 coins in front of me. My hands were shaking so badly that I had to clench them into fists to keep them still. "I don't know what you want," I said aloud, my voice cracking. "But if this is what you need, if this is what I have to do, then I welcome you." The silence that followed wasn't normal. It wasn't just the absence of sound, it was the absence of everything. No air, no movement, no life. The world itself seemed to hold its breath, and then the knocking started. It was everywhere. The walls, the windows, the floor beneath me, the ceiling above. It pounded from every direction, faster and louder, until it wasn't knocking anymore. It was banging, bang, bang, bang. The house shook with the force of it. Plaster cracked, picture frames fell from the walls, and I could feel the floorboards buckling under my knees. I clutched the coins, squeezing them so hard that the edges cut into my palms. Blood dripped onto the floor, warm and sticky, but I didn't care. And then it stopped. The silence came rushing back, thicker and heavier than before. I couldn't hear my own breathing, couldn't feel my own heartbeat. It was like the world had disappeared. I looked up. It was standing in the corner of the room. I don't know how I didn't see it before. It was huge, its head brushing the ceiling, its limbs impossibly long and thin. Its skin was pale and stretched tight, and its face was wrong. It didn't have eyes, just deep, empty pits where they should have been. Its mouth was too wide, filled with jagged, uneven teeth that seemed to stretch all the way back to its throat. It didn't move. It just stared at me, or at least, it felt like it was staring, even without eyes. "Why?" I whispered. its head tilted to the side, slow and deliberate, like it was curious. "You called me," it said. Its voice wasn't deep or guttural like I expected. It was soft, almost kind, but there was something underneath it, something sharp and hungry. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. It took a step toward me, its limbs creaking like old wood. "I gave you the rules," it said, each word dripping with amusement. "And you followed them, one by one, knock by knock, until there was nothing left to protect you." It was right in front of me now, crouching low so its face was level with mine. Its breath was hot and sour, stinking of rot and sulfur. "You belong to me now." I woke up hours later. At least, I think it was hours. The sun was rising, its light spilling through the cracks in the curtains. The house was silent. No knocking, no whispers, no breathing. Just silence. For a moment, I thought it was over. Maybe it was a dream, or some kind of hallucination brought on by stress. But then I looked at my arm. The skin was raw and red, burned into a shape I didn't recognize. A spiral with jagged lines cutting through it, just like the symbol I'd drawn weeks ago for Rule 3. It wasn't just a mark. It was alive. The skin pulsed and writhed, moving like something was crawling underneath it. I screamed. I don't remember uploading the video. When I woke up, it was already online. The thumbnail was me sitting in the dark, the coins in front of me, my face pale and sunken like I hadn't slept in days. The title read, 21 Ways to Invite a Demon. Do not watch this. The video itself. I don't know how to describe it. The footage kept glitching, cutting between scenes that I don't remember filming. One moment, I'm staring into the camera, whispering something I can't make out. The next, I'm standing in the basement, my reflection in the shattered mirror, smiling back at me. The last shot is the worst. It's the living room, empty except for the coins on the floor. The camera slowly pans up to the ceiling, where the words "It's here" are scratched into the plaster. The screen goes black, and then a voice, my voice, whispers, "Your turn." I don't know how much time I have left. The mark on my arm is spreading, crawling up my neck, sinking deeper into my skin. I can feel it inside me now, moving, growing. If you're reading this, please, don't look for the list. Don't try the rules. Don't let it in. Because once you start, you can't stop. And once it's here, it's forever. Thank you for tuning into my story. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to like the video. It helps support my channel and allows me to keep creating more content for you. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to comment below and share your favorite part of the story or any theories you might have. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. Your support means the world to me. And I'm excited to bring you even more thrilling stories.